When I was around 8 years old, I purchased a few dolls from my school gala. I want to say I got 3. I swear I had 3, but when we moved houses and had to clean out and we found the dolls, there were only 2. They were old school ceramic dolls. I'd have to do some research to find any exact details about them. They came with spare clothes and accessories like hats, socks, and shoes. There was a female doll, very pretty, with pale skin, fluffy eyelashes, long, curly, blonde hair, blue eyes, and red lips, and she was wearing a velvety deep blue dress and blue boots. She was also wearing a matching hat. I think they are called bonnet hats, very old school style. The other, I think it was supposed to be a male one, had short brown hair, brown eyes, and eyelashes as well, and was wearing a faded brown and green plaid long-sleeve collared shirt topped with brown overalls and brown boots. At home, my dad told me not to play with them as they were fragile and made more for display. They also came with a stand each. Despite that, I played some sort of house game with them as kids do. Randomly, I got a sore throat and was no longer motivated to play with them, so I put them away. The sore throat went away, and after a while I returned to them, only to get another sore throat. We stored them in a cupboard by the front door and barely touched them. They were eventually moved to the garage. Afterward, my parents would always hear a little girl either screaming or giggling. They thought it was my sister and I, but we would either be playing outside, sleeping, or quietly playing in our rooms whenever it happened. One time it was around 7 to 9 a.m. and my sister and I had changed the TV to one of the channels that streamed music. We danced in the lounge while my mom was in the kitchen doing dishes. She had placed her coffee on the other side of the bench from her while she washed the dishes, but all of a sudden the cup fell over and the coffee went everywhere. She looked around, but there was no sign of us. We were still in the lounge singing, dancing, and laughing. We told her we hadn't been in there, so it wasn't us, but the cup was nowhere near the edge, nor were we dancing hard enough to knock over a cup, and there was no wind strong enough to push over a full cup of coffee. This is in chronological order, and from between all these events we would all see dark figures floating or just randomly go by, but never in too much detail, just like a blob, and I would hear my name being called. Once I heard my dad shout out one of my nicknames from the forest that surrounded our house, but my dad was in front of me. My mom saw a little girl in a white dress, very similar to one that I owned at that time. She was home alone and had gotten up from the couch to go to her room, and she saw a little girl move from the lounge doorway to down the hall somewhere. Maybe a few months later, my mom and my sister went down the driveway to lock the gate while my dad and I stayed in the lounge. My dad sat on the couch adjacent to the TV as he watched rugby or something, and I sat on a couch that faced the lounge doorway and into the kitchen. After a little while I see, what I thought was my sister, walk into the kitchen, turn around and walk back out to the hallway. She had brown hair and wore a deep blue skirt. I was confused as I hadn't seen my mom and sister come back yet, but I happily shouted my sister's name, Brianna, and went to go to her, but the figure just disappeared, almost dissolved, in the hallway. My dad looked over at me weirdly and asked, "Brianna's down the driveway?" Sometime after, my mom was just chilling with my sister, minding her own business, when she starts feeling a burning sensation on her wrist. She looks down and there are fresh cuts spelling out 171. Now there could be a rational explanation for this. Maybe she brushed past something sharp, but the scratches didn't show up immediately. 1 and 7 are only really made up of lines, so it could be possible that it just coincidentally made the number 117, but based on the previous events we believed it was a grave number, maybe the little girl's grave number. There are 2 cemeteries outside the house, one on a mountain that can be seen outside my room window, and one that is about a 2-minute drive away. By now we are convinced a little girl is haunting our house. We would speak of it like it's just a fact and we just carry on with our lives. Items would randomly disappear. Even if you place something down then left for 1 minute, it would be gone by the time you go back. We all blamed the ghost, and eventually, I got mad because a bag of photos I had gone missing after I had left it on my bed while I went to go do something else for 5 minutes and then came back to it missing. I searched everywhere but gave up and got mad and decided to try my luck at threatening the ghost. My mom had told me you can get a blessing on a house and it will get rid of the ghost, so I started saying things like, "If you don't return that bag, I'm gonna get a blessing on the house and you will be gone, blah blah." I come back into my room defeated after chanting it down the hall. I look at my bed and there it is, the pink bag containing the photos. The bag I had lost and searched everywhere for 5 minutes was just sitting in plain sight on my bed. A few months or so later, I was awake at midnight not able to sleep. My bed was in a place where I could directly see out my door. I was just absent-mindedly looking around my room and trying to fall asleep when I see a dark figure on all fours quickly crawling past my door and into my sister's room. I was horrified and hid under the covers for hours until I fell asleep. I don't remember anything really happening afterward. Those events all took place over the span of 1 to 2 years when I was 8 to 10. When I was around 11 or 12, I went to bed one night at around 8 or 9. After getting into bed, I realized I had forgotten to push my desk chair in, but I couldn't be bothered, so I just left it and went on my phone. At around 10, I put my phone down and tried to sleep, but weird sounds were coming from the corner of my room. I was too tired to check at first, but after a while, it became really annoying, so I grabbed my phone to use the light and pointed in that corner. It was the corner my chair was in. My chair had spun around. It was now facing me when it was facing the opposite way before. There was absolutely no wind, all the doors and windows were shut and everyone else was asleep. I had read online that spirits like to sit in unoccupied chairs at night, so I was terrified. From then on, I would always tuck my chair in before bed, and I sometimes put a pillow or something on it. In the morning I was in the car with my mom, I think she was dropping me off at school maybe, and I told her what had happened that night. She replied saying that's funny, 'cause around 2 a.m. last night I felt my bed and blanket down by my feet go down as if someone was sitting there. Later in the day, my mom and sister had gone to the supermarket or something, and my dad and I were home alone. Around this time we were planning on subdividing our property, so we started getting set up down the opposite end of the current house. My dad told me to get ready, change clothes that can get dirty, and get gumboots on and my water bottle so we could go do some work down there. My dad was already ready and left while I was still in the house. I finished eating something in the kitchen and then went down to my room to grab my drink bottle. As I was just about to turn into my room, my t-shirt gets pulled back as if someone tugged on it, and then I get these really cold chills. There was no wind and it was a fairly warm day, nor were there any doorknobs for my shirt to get caught on. I panicked and leapt forwards to grab my drink bottle, then sprinted out of the house as fast as I could. I slammed the door shut and ended up filling my drink bottle with a hose outside 'cause I was too scared to go back in. When my mom got back, I told her about it as she walked from the car to the house. She was spooked and decided it would be funny if we used a ghost app on our phone to see if there was someone there. We opened the ghost app and it picks up hello, and then the second thing it says was chair. I was so scared as my chair had moved by itself that night. My mom and I looked at each other blankly. After that, not much happened. My sister heard weird things in her room. My friend and I took the ghost app out on a dinghy with us and we paddled out around the river by our house. It said a girl drowned there. I had a dream of this elderly lady warning me that there were 2 little ghost girls across the river. That's where the cemetery is coming from my mom and I. We subdivided our property and moved out to the opposite end. We took the dolls with us, but nothing else has happened since. I'm a 28-year-old female. The story I'm about to tell you happened back in 2016 with my best friend Chris. Since the day Chris and I met, we have always gotten ourselves into the dumbest situations ever. I mean, Chris ran away once and had my nerves all messed up, but he came back because he had no money. We were not the smartest teens, but we still enjoyed life. So one summer night, Chris and I were hanging out, and we were trying to think of a place to explore, like we always did. At the time, I told him I'd never been to the old rock house in Greenwood, South Carolina. Now, before I get started, let me give you a little history of the rock house. A man named Thomas Tom Paine Tolbert built a fireproof house in 1926. The fireproof house was constructed entirely from stone, concrete, glass, and steel. After years of family homes burning down, Tolbert lived in the detached kitchen and used the large house to store family heirlooms. Tolbert lived his later years in isolation. The now crumbling fortress is accessible only by foot, and no one has ever lived inside its walls. You can look up way more about the history online if you like. Now, back to my story. I've always been told the rock house has many spirits in and around it, but like I said at the time, I've never been there. So with that said, Chris and I took my cousin's car and headed out to the old rock house. I've heard of people going during the day, but I've never heard people say they went at night. We, being dumb, went at night because, why not? Ghosts and spirits never bothered me too much, being that I've seen them my whole life. Once we pull up to the woods and park on the side of the road, I get the bad feeling running all over my body. I sat there for a moment. I believe Chris sees this look on my face and asks if I still want to do this. Something is telling me not to get out, but at the same time, I want to see this place even at night. Yeah, let's go see how scary this place is. I told him. Hell yeah, let's do it. He replied, "We get out and start walking through the woods. As we are walking, we have our phones out for light, and we are making jokes and acting silly like we always do. We can never take anything seriously, no matter what. As we are walking, we don't realize how quiet it is to be in the woods at night, in the middle of summer. We find our way to the front of the house. Chris is in front of me, and we are looking at the house. No front door and no windows, all you can see is pure darkness. For some reason I just can't move, even though Chris is walking to what used to be the door. At this moment, I realize we are in complete darkness, and there are no sounds. No animals, no bugs, no wind, or anything. Just pure silence. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I see something in the top left window. But before I completely look, I hear something to the left of me, and I look over. But I see nothing. Only the darkness. A feeling of dread falls over me, but nothing is there. Chris is now at the door of the house and looking inside. I look at the windows, and there it is. Something is there in the window, looking down at me. My body turns cold. Those eyes. I'll never forget those eyes burning a hole in my soul. Bright yellow and reddish eyes like fire. All of a sudden I hear Chris say, "Oh, hell no." He turns to run to me, but my body is still frozen. He grabs my wrist and pulls me out to run. He never lets me go. As we are running, we are jumping over falling trees and everything on the ground that people have left over time. As we run, I realize something is running beside us, and I don't dare to look back. My body is now in a pilot mood as Chris has the grip still on my wrist, pulling me. My mind is blank and my heart is racing. At one point, I felt like I could feel the breath of whatever was chasing us. The moment we make it to the car, everything comes back to me, and I'm back in control of my mind and body. We jump when Chris goes to start the car. He has his face covered in the steering wheel as he tries to start the car, but it's dead. The car is dead. We start freaking out with my head buried between my legs and Chris still hiding his face. I yell out, "This is it, Chris. This is how we die. White people die in movies because we do dumb shit like this." Chris yells back at me, "Shut up. We are not going to die. The car will start." I can still feel this thing outside of the car. It's just there. Is this why there are so many spirits here? Does it take the souls of people it has caught to come here? I feel it looking at us. Something wants me to look at it, but at the same time, a voice in my head is telling me not to. I want to cry. The car starts, and Chris tries to speed off. We start going down the road, but then one of the tires blows. We are now on the side of the road again, and we just sit there, not wanting to get out. It's quiet again. The feeling of being watched is still there. Luckily for us, a guy in a truck pulls up behind us. I feel safe right now. The guy pulls over and helps Chris change the tire. I hold my phone as a light with my back to the woods. I still have that feeling. I want to turn and see what is there, but I dare not. Something is telling me not to look. After the tire gets fixed, we head to the huddle house close by to calm down. The poor lady working that night sees something is wrong, and with what little money we have, she helps us pay for a meal. The next few days, strange things started happening around my house. For example, I'm in the kitchen fixing something for lunch. My roommate and I are talking like normal, and the cutting board goes flying across the kitchen. "See," she gives me this look and says, "See what you caused. Shit keeps happening for no reason, all because you want to visit haunted places." I pick up the cutting board. At this point, I feel like I need to make things right. I've always been told that if you disturb the dead, you have to make things right. So with that being said, that weekend I go see some friends who don't live at the rock house and told them I need to go there, so we do. This time, it's full daylight. Once we get there, I still have this feeling, but I don't say a word. Once we get to the house, my friends go in to look around. They explore the place, inside and out. I look to the left of me and see nothing, but the feeling is there. My body is weak. As I walk in, I look in the direction that Chris saw something. Then I look into the room to the left of me and see that the room is full of designs in the paint all over the room. The whole house is covered the same way. But there is something about this one room. I walk into the room. There is a pentagram with all the markings around it. I walk over to it and examine it closely. I walk around it, seeing if it's done right, and to my eyes, it is. I yell out to my friends, "Hey, I think someone tried to summon a demon or something." As soon as the words leave my mouth, something comes crashing down. I get the hell out of there and just start running out of the house, sadly leaving my friends inside without meaning to. All I do is run through the woods, yelling, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I won't stop until I'm out of the woods. My friends come after me, wondering what is going on, so I tell them about the other night and what just happened as well. At this point, I just want to leave. We all get into the car. The friend driving goes to start the car, but it's dead, just like the other night, but in a different car. My mind goes back to the other night, and this big, dark creature comes to mind for some reason. I've never seen it before. Was it the thing chasing us that night? Was it putting itself in my mind to scare me more? So many questions. I try my best not to freak out. I called my roommate to come pick us up. As we are waiting, a car pulls up. He must live on this road and know what happened. He says every time someone goes to the house, their car is dead when they get back. He helps jumpstart the car, and we go down the road. I see my roommate, and I jump out of the car and jump into mine. I speed off as fast as I can, wanting to get as far away from this place as possible. My friends met me at my house, and I made a promise to myself to never go back to the rock house. For some reason, Chris and I stopped hanging out. We didn't get into a fight or anything, we just stopped being friends, and we never spoke about what happened that night again until a few weeks later. We both seemed to have forgotten that night. I called him and asked him what it was that he saw that night inside the house that made him do what he did. He doesn't remember what he saw, but he remembers that night. I thought I wouldn't forget, but I did until a few weeks ago. Someone told me that your brain will block out something so traumatizing that you won't remember what happened and live your life like normal. Maybe that's what our brains did for us, so we won't live in fear forever. Now that it's 2023, and now that I remember this, I told this story recently to a few of my friends at work, and one person told me they wanted to visit the rock house. I told them no, they don't, but they really want to not believe in ghosts and have never experienced anything ghostly. So I said, go if you want, but I promise you I won't be going back to that place ever again, and once you do, you won't go back there either. The witch that used to live behind me didn't scare me as much as whatever was in the woods that night. Yes, a witch used to live on the property behind my house. My sister and future brother-in-law just had my nephew and moved into a rental home. The home was newer and located in a newer neighborhood. I was asked to babysit my nephew one evening. My sister and brother-in-law wanted to have their first evening out since the baby arrived, and I was happy to babysit. I came over, and my sister went over some details and mentioned that she had a load of baby clothes in the dryer. She asked if I had the time to take out the clothes and fold them. They left to enjoy their evening, and 30 minutes later, I hear the dryer sound, letting me know it was done drying. I scooped up my nephew and placed him in his crib. I went to the laundry room, took the clothes out, and folded them. I placed all the clothes in a basket and placed the basket on the changing table. I took my sleeping nephew out of the crib and placed him in his bassinet in the living room. I watched TV quietly for a while until I heard a loud bang come from the nursery, the room we were in earlier. I peeked into the bassinet, and my nephew was still sleeping soundly. I quietly made my way over to see what was making the noise and opened the door to the nursery. The laundry basket I had placed on the changing table was now on the other side of the room, upside down. The neatly folded baby clothes looked as though they had been tossed around. I quickly picked up the basket and clothes and brought them back to the living room to refold. I was confused by the whole situation but didn't want to ruin my sister and brother-in-law's evening and decided just to not mention the incident. The rest of the evening went smoothly. A few months went by, and my sister asked if I could babysit for an evening. I agreed, and this time my mom joined my sister and brother-in-law as they were going to a casino. My nephew had been napping prior to their departure, and my sister said he would need to be fed when he woke up. My nephew woke up 30 minutes after they left, and I brought him to the kitchen and placed him in a chair as I prepared his bottle. Before I go into what happens next, my name is Angelina, yet everyone calls me Angie. My mother, in particular, only used my full name when I was in trouble or angry with her. All in all, it's rare to hear my full name being used. Suddenly, I hear my mom yelling angrily from what seemed like the nursery, "Angelina, come here now." I yelled out, "Just a second, I'm in the middle of making the baby's bottle." Then again, I hear my mom call out, "Angelina, come here now," but now it sounds like she is in the master bedroom. Frustrated and confused, I yelled back, "What is going on?" 1 second I picked up my nephew and went into the master bedroom, talking on the way to what I assumed was my mom, asking, "What was going on? Why are you so upset? What happened?" And walked into an empty room. I looked around, and my mother was nowhere in the master bedroom. I looked in the nursery, which was empty as well. I looked throughout the rest of the home, guest bedroom, bathroom, and garage, and eventually checked the driveway for cars and only saw my car. I came back inside and called my mom. I said, "Hey, did you guys come back and forget something?" And my mom answered a confused no. "Why?" To which I responded, "I just heard you a bit ago. You sounded upset." And she responded, "I don't know what you're talking about. We've been on the road for over 30 minutes now." My stomach immediately sank. Once again, I didn't want to ruin their evening and just told her it must have been the television, even though it was off the entire time. After I hung up, the doorbell immediately rang. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest, and I quickly walked to the door. I immediately almost opened the door without checking, thinking that my mom was just pulling a prank and she was going to be at the door. I paused for a moment and decided to look out the peephole. No one was outside. I opened the door to peek out to see if there were any cars in the driveway and still saw my car. I instantly felt this overwhelming sense of dread. No one was visibly outside, and from where that house was located, you could clearly see the street in both directions. I never mentioned any of these incidents to my sister until she moved out of this rental home. As I was helping her move, I noticed that she had moved my nephew's crib into the master bedroom. I asked her why she had moved the crib into her room, more to see if my nephew had any sleep issues. What she told me was completely unexpected. She said around Halloween, she had bought a black light and plugged it in the nursery room. The room instantly lit up with what she described as a huge, concentrated stain in the middle of the room, with handprints going up the walls. She immediately felt very uncomfortable and moved the crib into her bedroom that night. I told her what had happened the first time I watched my nephew, and she opened up, saying that strange things were happening in the house and were the main reason she was moving. She was experiencing lights flickering in the home, the doorbell ringing when no one was at the front door, and hearing voices. She said the landlord offered to lower the rent if they signed a 1-year lease. She said the landlord told her that he was having issues keeping tenants in the rental and that she was the only tenant who stayed the longest. She refused the offer and moved. I always wondered if anything happened in that home, and I wish I had investigated it further. I absolutely hate that whatever was in that home mimicked my mother's voice.
If you have any stories you'd like to be featured for future videos, be sure to email us at shadowbuddytv@gmail.com.